Hello, everyone. And looks like we again having trouble. And if somebody is watching us, we are. How do you explain? So what?
We're
Where we
we're
are?
we're in the YouTube channel and we're also in the Natural Pigments Facebook. It's just that we started a new event, and unfortunately, for some reason, we can't get back into the original event. So we'll have to excuse us for these technical difficulties. Hopefully, we get this new system worked out. Oh, we will get it worked out the next time. But for some reason, it just blocked us from going into that particular streaming event. So just look at the YouTube channel. Of course, if you're not here, you're not hearing this anyway, so it doesn't do any good. But hopefully you can find us. Again, it's on our Rublev Colors YouTube channel or the Natural Pigments Facebook page. So let's go ahead and start. This is all being recorded anyway, so...
Okay, so today is December 21st, 2022. My name is Tatiana Zaitseva, and
I'm George O'Hanlon.
Yes. Okay. So I'm disturbed a little bit because I see 30 people are waiting right now, and you can't help them anyhow. Yes,
I can't message them right
if
now.
somebody
It doesn't do any good because they're not watching this.
okay.
So anyway, so let's start our program.
Oh, on Facebook, people see.
Okay.
Whoever see us on Facebook, can you please try to reach people on YouTube and maybe just refer them to Facebook. Thank you very much for support. It's really hectic here. We don't even understand what's happening. Every time we try, it's not working. So, but. So just before everybody will switch, maybe hopefully will find us, I will just talk a little bit about what's happening in natural pigments. So we will have 26 and 27. We have inventory of December. We have inventory in our factory, so that means we will not send any orders. So if you need something, hurry up right now. We still have 2 days to work. And so cohorts meeting will be on January 6th. And I just remind you, so this would be instead of the last Saturday of the month, we will do that actually in January, first week, first Saturday.
First Saturday
of the month. Yeah. While George will start right now talking about very, very important topic, because there are no 1 week passing on our company where we don't have the phone calls about how to use resin mediums, and every time as much as we try to convince you, do not. We will try today to convince you to do this safely. Okay, so let's go. And while George will
looks like people are finding us. I can see.
Great.
Thank you for messaging us.
Thank you very much. And so again,
we need to announce the Friends program.
Oh yes,
you forgot.
Yes, I got so disturbed. So this is again, we were talking about. The biggest thing for us this year, it was new website, and with new website we brought a lot of interesting things, and you will find the bundle program. So then whereas on the middle bar you can see the bundles, and so bundles are a good way to save money because people call us and asking about how to have some kind of discounts, which we never have unless it's like special deal or something. So, but now we found ways for you to shop with us and try maybe things a little bit cheaper, where you will bundle the things. And so then we have another good thing. So we lower our bar of free shipping from $150 to $100. And so now, again, it's a little bit easier for you to shop with us. And the biggest thing, of course, now we have it's reward program, and people who shop with us for years and years and years, we would like to give you something from us now, and so it's called Friends Program. And so I think George needs to show that on
I'll give an
on the
example of that
screen.
just before I dive into that. Individuals are asking if they can ask questions. Certainly ask questions. You can post them now. I can see them, and once and you can ask questions about anything at the end, so not a problem. So I'm going to show right now. Let's go to the Friends program. So this is, whoops, that's what it looks like. Okay, so if you go to our website and you click on rewards, you come to this page here. And you can join the program, and you have to be a registered, or you have to have an account, Natural Pigments. And I'll show you how this basically works. I'm going to log in. So log into the website. Oh. Just a second. Let the whole thing load. And once you've gone ahead, and I'll go back to the rewards page now after I logged in. Once you've gone ahead and joined the program and you log in, now you see if you have points, you're going to have points here. So it'll say your name. You can redeem points. You can also look at your rewards history, which shows your purchases. And in this case, this is a $10 off coupon. And you can just simply click here to copy it, and then you use that coupon at checkout. So, so different ways to earn points by leaving reviews, adding photographs, videos, reading some of the content. We even give you points to read the content on the website. That is the Artist Materials blog. If you follow us on Instagram or TikTok, and then on your anniversary, depending on which tier you're in, you get extra points. 100 points if you're in the ochre tier, 250 if you're in the cobalt tier, and 500 points if you're in the vermilion tier. And how you use your points is, like for instance here, I've got 368 points, and I can redeem 100 points for a $10 off coupon, 200 points for a $20 off coupon, and 300 points for a $30 off coupon. I don't have enough points to do $40, but that's what it is here. And then you can see the tiers and the benefits at each tier. So the more that you spend, the more points you earn. And of course, when you get into the other tiers, the points translate initially 1 point for every dollar spent. But as you get up into higher tiers, the cobalt and the vermilion, the point multipliers get higher. And you get points just for entering the program. You can also get points for referring your friends. So lots of benefits. And if you have questions about this, a lot of the questions are answered here at the bottom of the page. And also the terms and conditions of participation, the link is down at the bottom of the page for that. So it's a very simple program. You get points for shopping, and you can use these points to get coupons off. And as the program continues to roll out, and by the way, this program is for the naturalpigments.com website. It will be rolled out. It's effective now, and many of you probably who have been shopping at least in the past couple of months already have points accumulated. So even though you haven't joined the program, you probably already have points in there if you have an account with Natural Pigments. And like I said, the Europe and Canada websites, we're going to roll this out about the middle of next month. So those websites will also have those advantages. So you'll be able to see that when that rolls out. And we'll let you know. We'll send email about that announcement. Excuse me. And you can get, we'll send email announcements about this to individuals that who are having accounts, and would just a reminder that they can go ahead and join this particular program. So we think this is a really exciting program, and we hope everybody takes advantages of it.
So what? Thank you for helping me. Somebody already helped me to understand. So it's again went to paler shades of white. On the part one, like what was last week. I don't know what happened, and I see people started switching, and I'm trying to. I still have another 15 people there on first channel. So then we can switch hopefully. And I promised them. Then we still didn't talk about Italian varnish. Now we will. So,
okay.
And I'm again so sorry.
Technical difficulties
Yes.
when you do this program live.
And
That's
I'm
why.
suddenly writing English. I never tried to do this, but
So that's why we're considering. I mean, we'll probably do one live event a month, but we're going to be doing some of these recorded because the live just there's all kinds of things that.
Plus, we live in middle of nowhere, so we and again, thank you for concern. We had several people writing to us about earthquake. We did have big earthquake.
We felt it, but it unfortunately didn't affect our area too much. Yeah.
Yes, so we are good.
It's
thank you very much.
Up further north of us, though.
It's like not one thing to another. So one it's fires during the summer, and now it's earthquake during the winter. So I hope still some people on that channel, but let's do not punish everybody who already on this one. And so thank you very much. Let's talk about
gel mediums.
Yes.
That's what everybody's here for. So this particular discussion, it's just a very brief history of gel mediums, and I've put, of course, I will put in the comments. I had it in the comments, but not in this one. I'll put down below this video. I will put the links to the full-length article. And it's in a very extensive article on the use of mediums, specifically gel mediums, in historical painting. But I'll give you a little bit brief rundown. And I started at the point in the 19th century because it's really where this interest became so well locked in, and it affected a great deal of paintings and painters during the 19th century. So for centuries, gel mediums have been promoted as the secret of Renaissance artists such as Jan van Eyck. Among the proponents of this belief was the secretary to the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Paris, Jean-François-Léonor Mérimée. His influence on the 19th century artists can be seen in the works of the French Academy painters, including, of course, William Bouguereau. Mérimée researched the painting techniques employed from the time of Van Eyck to the present, both through the analysis of early treatises and the examination of paintings by the old masters. This interest was spurred by the recognition that, many paintings from the 15th century were better preserved than the majority created in Mérimée's own time, as well as by the subsequent desire to discover the secret which could enhance the stability of modern paintings. This is that age-old search for the secret of the old masters, especially those of Jan van Eyck. He was convinced that the early oil paintings were composed of oil and resin, and it was through oleoresinous mediums that the old master paintings were better preserved and possessed greater transparency and brilliance. So when his book, The Art of Painting in Oil, was translated into English in 1839, Mérimée had a wider audience and arguably a longer-lasting impact on the discussion of Van Eyck's technique. In addition to a comprehensive review of early and modern painting techniques, Mérimée provided detailed descriptions and recipes for several painting mediums, specifically Italian varnish, Flanders varnish, English varnish, and a copal oil varnish. These mediums, he believed, could provide that toughness and the durability they observed in the 15th century paintings. The basis of Mérimée's mediums is a mixture of litharge, or lead oxide, which is dissolved in linseed or walnut oil. This was known as brown oil, or sometimes, and more often today, as black oil, which is a drying oil that was prepared in Italy from a very remote period, as Mérimée wrote. Now, it is unclear when lead drying oils were first introduced in painting, but the first time lithargio is mentioned is in the Bologna manuscript of 1430. And as a dryer, however, litharge becomes increasingly popular only from the 16th century onwards. Now, as early as De Mérimée in the 17th century, lead oxide is the most common ciccative in his collection of recipes. Due to its better solubility in oils, lead oxide is the best dryer compared to the other lead compounds found in recipes from that time period and forward. Now, in using this drying oil, Mérimée instructs that some mastic varnish must be added to it. He explains this forms a jelly-like substance that flows freely in the brush but remains in place without running off the palette, or off the canvas for that matter. Mérimée offers evidence of admixtures of varnish and oil in the medium used by early painters. As early as 1587, the Italian art historian Giovanni Armanini wrote that the addition of a little mastic varnish to the binding medium of all glazing colors acts as a dryer and increases the saturation of glazes. While varnishes were employed in paintings as early as the 15th century, their use was restrained and usually only in the glazes, if any. Mérimée, however, advocated the use of gel mediums throughout a painting, not only in the glazes. Mérimée recommended painting with a series of thin, transparent glazes containing a large proportion of varnish. Varnishes produce a surface that the artist can easily work on and facilitates the development of smooth painting techniques. Mérimée was also aware that such painting practices produced surfaces that were not very durable. Yet the practices advocated by Mérimée facilitated the production of enamel-like paint films favored by the French academic school. In his desire to accommodate the taste of French Academy painting, Mérimée instructed to use oil and varnish mediums interleaved throughout the paint layers. Bouguereau practiced techniques remarkably similar to those advocated by Mérimée. In his studio notes, Bouguereau described the method, or his method, of applying a layer of viscous varnish with a stiff brush over the ground immediately on this prepared canvas. And this consisted of a mastic varnish oil and drying agents. After painting in his sketch, he then fixed it with a coating of copal varnish and oil diluted with turpentine. For body color, Bouguereau employed a medium consisting of 1 part gum elemi, 5 parts mastic varnish, a drop or two of brown fixed oil, or brown oil, and several drops of terebinth, which is a dryer that was very popular at that time. Now, he completed the picture by glazing with more of this medium, which he adjusted to contain a higher proportion of varnish and mineral spirits. Mérimée and Bouguereau advocated a system of layers of varnish containing painting interspersed with intermediate and viscous coatings over the sketch. Now, it's easy to see that the addition of varnish to oil paint or as isolation layers permitted the artist to make that really coveted enamel-like finish that we see in neoclassical painting. However, conservation scientists caution against using varnish in paint layers because it makes them highly vulnerable to solutions used to clean and remove varnishes. Delacroix expressed concern about this when working on his picture, The Women of Algiers, which is shown here. He showed the concern of preventing the varnish underneath from being attacked when the top coat of varnish is removed at some later date. So outlining a problem that they were already aware of, and that is when a varnish is going to be removed, the solutions that are used would often attack the entire paint film. And defects in the paint film usually accompany the use of resins in oil paintings. So when defects are observed, they may not necessarily be the result of the resin, but the painting technique used in its application, such as shown here in this painting, where we see there is the use of a resin in the oil as a varnish, and we can see craquelure occurring throughout this particular robe of this individual. So varnishes in oil painting didn't really have much of a history, although it was used as early as the 15th century, but very sparingly and only in certain passages of painting. It wasn't used throughout the entire painting because paint is vulnerable to solvents that contain varnishes. And we see that reticulation or cracking, which results from the improper use of varnishes, that is not blending the varnish homogeneously throughout the paint, causes this kind of drying cracks or reticulation. And it actually forms softer paint films, which they were quite aware at that time. So this kind of wraps up the historical part of this presentation. And again, much more details provided in the articles on our website, which we'll go over. But what we wanted to show you is that we spent a lot of time Sorry. Okay, so
so we probably should repeat. Okay,
yes,
so something. Thank you very much, guys.
Our sound went off. But briefly, what we wanted to say is that we recreated these. We spent a lot of time recreating some of these gel mediums and the mediums used by artists from early centuries onwards. And we recreated this one as the Italian varnish. And now the Italian, in this particular case, this particular Italian varnish that we make does not contain any resins like mastic. Yet we were able to successfully give it some of the same characteristics, not exactly the same, of course, but some of the same characteristics as the Italian varnish had that was described by Mérimée.
Hopefully we know what it was. But anyway, so what you guys missed, what we were talking about original. So we do have 2 programs specifically about gel mediums on May 2022. So if you want to see that, you can just go back to our channel. And yeah, hopefully there are no hiccups there, but
no, it's a recorded. So, it's recorded. It's on. It's actually on earth colors, and we're showing how earth colors actually make very effective glazing. And that's another good point. Is what you want to, if you're going to be glazing with colors, you want to be using colors that have less opacity. And we're showing the difference here. Here we're seeing a Mars red, which is a very opaque pigment. And
very small particles and a very powerful color.
Yeah. And it's an amazing color. But when you're trying to make a glaze with it, obviously you have to use a lot of the medium to create the same glaze. And that was the point of that particular program back in May of 2022, which you can see on the Rublev Colors YouTube channel. So check that out for a complete video on that. But what we're trying to show here is just the consistency of the Italian varnish made by Rublev Colors. Very different. The properties are very similar to that described by Mérimée, The difference is we don't put any resin in it. Someone asked, of course, does it have an odor? Yes, because there is a small amount of turpentine with the Italian varnish, and that's just a necessary aspect of in order to get some of the working qualities. we also and in the article that I will put the link on the bottom, which discusses in more detail how the Italian varnish was actually made back then, and then we also discuss how we make it today and the differences in that. But what the idea was, we were trying to achieve some of the same effects, which were really quite interesting. And we see some of these effects in these neoclassical paintings done in Europe in the 19th century.
Don't you think, like, people call us very often and they're asking about Mérimée medium, and very often people compare that one with Mérimée. Is that, do you think it's kind of like close by?
Well, see, Mérimée medium is actually an offshoot of this. Even though Jacques Mérimée claims that he discovered the secrets of the secrets of the Van Eyck's medium and so forth. In reality, he didn't. What he did was it was basically lifted the same. And I know there's a lot of Mérimée people out there who will disagree with this statement, but he took that basic formula that was already described, and that's why I've settled on this. Mérimée was such an interesting individual in the beginning of the 19th century, and what probably one of the first, he was an artist also, and one of the first ones to be heavily involved in conservation, chemistry, and making paint better. He was wrong about some of the things, but he was also right about some of the things that he wrote. And so what's interesting is that he described a medium that is essentially Mérimée today, which is a brown or black oil, which is that oil cooked with lead, and then adding mastic resin to that. Now, doing that instantly causes, as Mérimée describes, causes that medium to gel up, and that was the interesting effect. So that it did caused faster drying, so that they were able to apply layers very quickly, but also it created a very smooth, almost glossy-like surface, and that was very desirable for painters, let's say in the 19th century, who were doing these very smooth paintings, such as Bouguereau. But we have to keep in mind that there are issues with using resin, and because resin basically is more easily soluble than oil paint, and hence it's susceptible to the cleaning, as well as just simply putting a varnish layer over the painting itself. When you do that, you can actually cause problems for that. And what we also find is that when these kinds of materials, such as resinous or varnishes in oil paint, are not mixed in properly, because they do enhance drying of paint, if they're not homogeneously mixed in.
I think you mentioned that in your article. So you read this article, George. It was 2013 article, but he just revamped that article.
I revamped it completely.
Yes.
So we began in 2010 to reconstruct all of these mediums, and by 2013 we found that we could make this Italian varnish, but in a much better way and without the resin, and that it performs similarly to the Italian varnish, which some people also would say is the Mérimée medium too. So, and of course, we always recommend that please use medium sparingly, because always they do tend to create problems in painting when they're overused, which is part of the problem in 18th and 19th century paintings, that they used way too much medium in their paint.
So I don't see any.
I have some questions
so you
here.
have questions. I don't see any questions. I'm now afraid to change anything.
No. So I'm going to put a question from Constance. And her question is, I see you mix up the Venetian red on earth color. Will there be an effect, being an enamel look? Yes, to some degree. And again, it depends. We do see that and I think some of the swatches you did for that video in May showed that it did
Yes.
have a glossy effect.
Yes, that's for sure. But of course, you will not even I mean, when you will see the video when I compare the Mars red and Venetian red. Venetian red has much bigger particles, and yes, it does kind of increase the gloss on that paint, but not even close to if you will use obviously with iron oxides, but synthetic iron oxides. If on the same video when we were showing, so you will see that if you do look for gloss, so then actually epoxide gel is giving the most gloss from all our videos. I mean our mediums, and but Italian varnish dries quite fast. So it's why when I read yesterday Georgia's article, so it like made total sense finally. So because when people talk about like unevenness and not even sheen, so when they don't mix very well the paint, and so then one passage will have less medium and then another is more, and then that's what happening. That be careful with that. All of the all of the mediums what giving the sheen, so then you really need to keep on back of your mind. As much as we say like this is like jewel like finish with Italian varnish and Venetian medium, but
yeah, obviously the
something
particle size will affect any kind of gloss. So smaller particles will tend to enhance gloss, larger particles not.
Something you were mentioned yesterday, it was midnight, I already forget. You said then do not put on, doesn't make any sense to put like on first layers and second layers. What we were talking about, was it the same?
Well, the practice, and as I also mentioned, is the practice and this actually that Bouguereau used, and that actually came from his own studio notes, and was that he did these interleavings of varnishes. So as soon as as soon as he had a ground, he put a very thin coat of varnish over that. He did his sketch, and then he put an oil and copal resin varnish on top of that, sealed that in, and then he then proceeded to work, often adding varnish layers to interleave, and that was a common practice. That was a practice that Mérimée advocated in his book, which is originally published in French in 1830, and then published in an English translation came out in 1839. So, but that practice is not, and actually we see that practice also being done in the 20th century and advocated by lots of different painters. And we see again resinous varnishes being advocated, mixed in with oil. Ralph Mayer did that with his Dammer varnish, turpentine and bodied or stand oil. So this was done quite often by artists.
But then we see result.
But we see the result is not good.
Yeah.
And the result is because the varnish resins are much more susceptible to cleaning, much more susceptible to solvents used in varnishes. So when you put a varnish on top of the painting, the solvent wicks into the paint layers, causing the whatever resins are there to begin to swell. And anytime conservators run across a painting that has varnish in the paint layers, they always are very careful about that, and they're also not only careful, but they also hesitate to even clean the painting. And this was the case originally when they were considering cleaning the Night Watch by Rembrandt. They thought that he used this, that this was the common practice. Again, this was coming out of 19th century, 18th, 19th century information. So everybody believed that was the common practice that these painters used. And when they discovered that it wasn't, then they were actually quite relieved, and they went ahead and did the cleaning of the Night Watch.
But again, we are not police, although we sound once in a while, don't do that. So, but what we are saying, so of course, every material you can use if you use with brains and with understanding. And so that's why, very often people say then, you telling us do not use, resins in the medium, in the paint, but same time you're making all these mediums. And we do. We, because there is a place always on your painting where you absolutely need, and that's what George early showed then, what old masters would put just special passages only on the places where they want to protect the color, or they...
one of the reasons for using resin and why we see resins being used as early as the 15th century is because resins have a higher refractive index than oil does. And as a result, it increases the transparency of that paint. So where we do see it in very early paintings is only in glazes, or mostly in glazes as far as they know now, and very sparingly. Not every glaze, and it wasn't slathered through the entire painting, as a lot of people tended to believe in prior centuries. There's a question, and I guess I'm gonna digress a little bit. There's a question here. It's quite long, but Jacob asks about the rewards program. If you have any specific, specific questions about that, please contact our customer care, the 800 number. But just to let you know, the rewards program only tracks purchases through the website, not through retailers. That's the only thing.
And especially
and there's just no way for us
they're so small, we can't...
there's just no way for us to do that, unfortunately. But just thought to let you know that. Now, there's some other interesting...
we have finally questions. And again, from last week, I really was disturbed, and we almost we're thinking do not do live anymore again, because it is painful for us as much as for you. So we really appreciate your time, and thank you for being with us. And it's two of us here. So we don't have anybody to help us.
But we changed our equipment, and we're still
trying to figure out.
Because we had it all worked out before, but now it's so let's continue.
Yes.
So there's one question here from Jason. He says that I have some gum alemi, and he wanted to experiment with it, but never heard any details about why to include in varnishes, or in what proportion to add it, and what other ingredients it should be used. Can you give me more information or technical references to consult? Well, basically, gum alemi, which is a natural resin, is often used or often was used in varnishes. As you can see, Bouguereau used it as a plasticizer because it actually doesn't harden. And that's also similar to Canada balsam, by the way, folks. So if you the range of resins can be, some of them form very hard surfaces, some form soft surfaces. It just depends. Typically, mastic and damer, or damar as other people call it, tend to form kind of a medium, hard, soft surface. But gum alemi, Canada balsam form soft surfaces because they're used principally as plasticizers. In other words, they're an addition to other resins to give it a little bit more flexibility and suppleness. Copal, on the other hand, or actually the copals, the real ones, not the Southeast Asian ones, which are actually more similar to damer, and the ones that are basically unavailable today are much harder. And those are the ones that Bouguereau would have used as an example, and many during the 19th century.
Here's a question, since you mentioned already. Kala is asking, what is your medium would be, say, more similar to what Bouguereau was using, and what is your gel medium are free of fumes. Kala, that's what we exactly said, and so that probably Italian varnish is the most likely looking like. Of course, it's just our understanding based on formulation, and so unfortunately, all of that, like Venetian medium, Italian varnish, and Wilson's medium, they all based on not based on solvents, but they do have solvents. So then please don't use them if you have a trouble. And so our oleo gel, walnut gel, epoxide gel, they don't have any solvents.
Mm-hmm.
So they obviously smell like oil. But if you want to know more about, I will just repeat again, on May 2022, we had two sessions of on artist materials advisor specifically for gel mediums, where we talking, and we separate them exactly by what has the solvents and what don't.
So also, there's a question here from Angus. I'm going to add that to the broadcast. Could you please comment on what medium additive would be suitable to cover the ground layer to minimize oil sinking in? That's a good question, Angus, and thank you for asking that. Because a lot of people wonder about that. One of the best things actually to do if you experience lots of sinking in is to adjust your ground, because a lot of the sinking in is largely due to very absorbent grounds, and also use of solvents and very oily mediums. So in other words, to reduce or minimize sinking in, eliminate the use of solvents or reduce the amount of solvents used. If you're blocking in a first layer of paint, one of the best things to do is add bodied oil to that, rather than using a particular medium. But you could add one of these gel mediums. In particular, the ones that would be most effective would be the Italian varnish or the oleo res gel. Those two would be most effective in adding, and it would actually, they do contain bodied oils, and it would give that effect to prevent or help to mitigate sinking in. Of course, again, reduce the amount of solvents, adding bodied oil to your paint, and not having lots and lots of mediums in the first layer. Just doesn't make sense anyway, especially if you want to get faster drying.
So Diverted Flight has several questions. The one or two Bouguereau I saw at the Louvre seem to be in good condition, but they might have to look after them. You're absolutely right. So that's why we have museums, then they take care for us, that we can at least see something. And we almost can assure you, 21st century, we will lose so much art, because George and I go in on the back of the museum restoration rooms, and of course we see in 15th and 16th and 17th century, but the most what is falling apart is, of course, 21st century art. And so that's, but of course, obviously, especially Bouguereau, now everybody is talking about Bouguereau, so then it's really, really taken care of. But
that's, again, as I mentioned, that was a problem already noted in the 19th century, that the paintings from the 15th century are in much better condition than those at that time. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't think the techniques have improved significantly since that time. And so yeah, it's
Diverted
a big...
Flight again has another question. What about amber varnishes?
So amber...
We have these questions, not often, but enough to talk about that.
So amber Amber is a fossilized resin, so it's basically resin exuded from trees millions of years ago, and then it becomes fossilized. It becomes very, very hard. In fact, it's almost impossible to dissolve amber in any solvents. There's possibly one solvent that can, but that solvent typically isn't used as a varnish. So what they have to do then is they have to cook or melt the amber at very high temperatures, and then introduce that in oil with either mineral spirits or most likely turpentine. The problem is that when you do that, it becomes black. So it's just a black substance. And whereas it does form very hard, it is a very hard resin, but that's part of the problem is, again, even if we were able to develop or use hard resins, most of these resins are carbonized a great deal in order to get them into a varnish. And then they are very dark. So the dark is a big problem, the dark color. And then secondly is really incorporating that. I can't emphasize that enough, that often artists are dipping their brush in a varnish and then adding into the paint. That doesn't do any good because it doesn't get that resin mixed into the paint so that it can act evenly as a dryer across the entire paint.
So I can tell you this. So probably like 15 years ago, when George was so excited about this old masters formulas, which he recreated almost all of them, including, of course, amber, because since he found me in Lithuania, so then we brought from Vilnius, of course, this best Baltic, the amber. And so he created, and I think we even had some video or
yeah, we made some videos of it. It's very interesting. There's no doubt about that. And
heck of a time to make it.
Very hazardous to make because you have to cook this at very high temperatures, at close to 300 degrees Celsius. So, and the fumes and everything else, I don't recommend that for individuals to try that. I know some,
most, of course, the color is
just
killer.
And again, just trying to get that mixed in correctly.
Yeah, and that's why, as much as people think, then we are taking all, historical formulas and just make it that for the heck. No, we don't. So whatever doesn't make sense, we don't touch it. And amber is one of that. So we tried, and we don't want to give to artists that, at least from our hands.
So another question here from Joyce. During the last video, which was the last AMA last week, we talked about unstable colors, or that is colors that are not light fast, such as and it wasn't Persian blue, it was Prussian blue. And is Prussian blue stable as a glaze? And what we did say very clearly was that that's how we recommend it to be used as a glaze over a paint film. And not necessarily over just a bright white, unless you need that brightness of the Prussian blue. But to apply that as a glaze is the best way to preserve that color, because as we've discovered, it is not light fast when it's mixed with certain whites. Those whites being in particular lead white and titanium white, which are the most common whites that will be used with that. So that is a big problem, but that's why we do recommend glazing with that color.
I have a couple questions here, Elman. So by the way, thank you guys for advocating. So because somebody asking and already somebody answering, knowing our product so well. So thank you for that. Elman is asking, is there any way to take out a layer of Italian varnish mixed with pigment from the surface of the painting?
To remove it?
Yeah.
If it's fresh, you might be able to remove it with, with a solvent.
Yeah.
Like turpentine. As it gets harder, of course, the only thing that will remove it is toluene. But I really hesitate to recommend that, because that could affect layers of paint below. if that, of course, is critical to you. So that would adversely affect it. And plus, it's a very aggressive aromatic solvent. So don't recommend that typically for individuals. And I don't recommend sanding because, of course, the Italian varnish does contain, because it is a leaded drying oil, and so we don't recommend sanding that.
I hope I'm not butchering the name Mazen or Mazen. So thankful to you always. Is alkyd medium described as a resin that we must avoid using also, especially preparing the ground? Great question.
Good question, yeah. And so keep in mind, alkyds are resins. And the difference, however, is this, is that alkyds have greater affinity for oil because they're actually, it is a resin that is made from vegetable oils. So typically, the first alkyds were made from linseed oil, but today most alkyds are made from safflower oil or soybean oil, and a very small amount of them from linseed oil. So greater affinity there. The other benefit is that they are all mixed intimately with oil. So in other words, the alkyds that you will buy, which as manufacturers we obtain, are what we call long oil alkyds, which means that they typically contain as much as 75% oil, and the rest is the alkyd resin or other ingredients, like sometimes they contain a small amount of solvents. So in that regards, they're basically more oil. The small amount of the resin there, which is a very hard resin, is very durable and is very resisting to solvents. But in any case, we do recommend, to use these minimally and properly, because anytime we start adding different components into an oil paint that tend to act on the drying ability of that paint, and if we don't add it and mix it throughout the paint, then we tend to get these like hot spots of drying, and which leads to these drying cracks and reticulation. There's another question here. A really good question that I always love is the problems that Joshua Reynolds faced was caused by resins. In some ways, yes, but again, it was more because of the improper use of resins and waxes, by the way. He tended to use quite a bit of wax. That was also very popular. You can see Mérimée, his recipe involved beeswax.
A lot.
And quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
And by the way, also his recipe included an inordinate amount of lead, which actually never quite dissolves into the oil. And in order to get it to even approach dissolving all of it, you have to heat that oil up to such high temperatures and for such long times that it really alters the oil considerably. As he says, it makes a soap, and that's correct, even though that soap is not water soluble per se. But in any case, it does become somewhat of a problem. And Joshua Reynolds' use, he would often put very heavy or high proportion of varnishes or waxes or other medium in different paint layers, like in the lower paint layers, and then he would put a lean paint layer on top of that. And of course, it was a total disaster. And in fact, it was, and he didn't seem to really care that much, apparently, because he was trying to achieve a certain look, which was this dark patina that he found on the Venetian paintings from earlier centuries. So we don't recommend his practice. Great artist, by the way, but obviously very problematic. We got 3 questions here from Jim. And when using Italian varnish, how would you work the layers underpainting, first pass, and final glazing? What we do recommend is using mediums like this in the final layers of your paint, and keeping the paint, according what most people call the fat over lean principle, but keeping the pigment volume concentration in the paint in lower layers as high as possible. In other words, using paint like straight out of the tube is usually the best thing to do. And then in the final layers, adding some oil medium to that for glazing. And obviously it will then slow down the time a little bit, although the Italian varnish tends to enhance or hasten the drying, but that's probably the best way. What proportion of medium to start with and finish with? As little as possible, always, is what we do recommend. But you can increase the amount of the proportion of medium as you go on. Really, we don't recommend anything. Typically, I mean, you'll hear the standard recommendation, no more than 20%. That's a rule of thumb. You can sometimes exceed that, and obviously many people do, but really just keep it as sparingly as possible. And can you use Italian varnish as a couch to paint into?
We did have artists using that.
Yes.
We do.
And
so
you can.
it's like you can. So again, what we do in our company, different from everybody else. We are saying that every each of you so different, and that's why we're giving you all kind of options. Not just like this triple, what you call triple disasters. So where
The trifecta, which is that, when I was going to art school, that was everybody was painting with Ralph Mayer's, what I call the trifecta disaster, because it was, it just it caused paint to dry so fast, and that was a pleasure. And it made nice surfaces that didn't sink in.
But then we have whole
but then you
generation.
have all kinds of problems with
we
it.
have whole generation of artists using the same medium and struggling through the same problems. And so, what George decided to give you for every each of you for your specific needs, you have your own medium. And so, Italian varnish one was the really for glazing. But we do have artists using that from the very bottom to the very top, and some of them very successful. And especially for those who think then it's looking like Merige, so they love that specifically. And of course, Venetian medium. So we even had a group of artists who were mixing Venetian medium and Italian varnish together, and it's something did do good for them. And so it's so as much as we say don't use it, but if you use
it sparingly.
sparingly.
This is a good question here. Can black oil be used to grind colors? Is it recommended with any pigments such as the problematic lamp black? Good question. And there's a little story behind that too, by the way. Because when we were first looking into making our own paint, and this was back in 2003, I talked to a number of individuals. One of them started a company that actually did that, where he was grinding colors in black oil. He found, of course, that wasn't a very good idea, and he stopped doing that. And
I think
so
he left the company. Yes.
Well, no,
or company left him.
The company is no longer around.
Yeah.
Not because because he was using black oil, because actually he stopped doing that, but for other reasons. But in any case, it's interesting that that's not what is recommended at all. It's best just to grind it in refined oil, or you can use a cold pressed oil, whatever oil that suits you. Is good for that. So, however, you mentioned here that can you do it with lamp black? And the answer is yes. Actually, most tubes of lamp black that are sold commercially already contain, not lead, of course, but they do contain most likely dryers, because otherwise lamp black just doesn't dry at all. In fact, what lamp black is, it's pure carbon, and it's an antioxidant, so it actually inhibits drying. So, and that's why we don't even recommend the use of lamp black on the palette. But if you are, then you're going to have to obviously use a dryer in order to get it to dry in your lifetime at some point. Nice comment. We appreciate it. You'll love your Venetian medium. It's incredible, forms in ways that are beneficial like no other medium I've seen. Thank you for your hard work. Well, thank you much for that. Also want to let you know that the Venetian medium is based on the Italian varnish. So we took the Italian varnish and then we modified it, and specifically, of course, we added leaded crystal glass, and that's how we came up with that. Another question here from Helena is, if using Italian varnish only in certain passages of the painting, won't it leave an extremely uneven finished surface regarding gloss dull? What is the best final varnish to use to solve this problem? Well, that's another good question. Yes, and that's why perhaps the best way to employ it is to add a little bit into certain colors, even though they may not be glazing. This is, and again, we recommend this very sparingly. You are going to have differences in any way, because, for instance, particle size of the color is going to introduce a difference, and a number of other factors too will introduce differences, because some colors, such as umbers and blacks, are more prone to sink in and so forth. So, and that's probably a good place actually where you would want to use it, where you could use it in an umber or black in order to kind of mitigate the sinking, and whereas you wouldn't want to necessarily use it in light colors, where its color might be somewhat effective to that.
So Ilman has another question. She said, since you answered my question, can you? It's about cleaning the Italian varnish with pigment. Can you paint over the layer of the Italian varnish?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
If
it's very glossy, you may want to rub it with a little bit, like take a lint-free cloth, moisten it with some of the solvent, try a less aggressive one, and just rub it to kind of kill that gloss, and then continue painting on that. Michelle Margulis asks about the condition of his paintings. If you're talking about Bouguereau, I'm not an expert in Bouguereau's paintings, but I have seen some of them. Some of them have craquelure patterns in them, which could be from a number of different things. So we can't always relate it to his particular practice, but it does become somewhat of a problem, the way he did paint.
We answered almost all of them. You can just scroll down, and the very bottom two, it's a colors question. So if you would, yeah.
Okay.
Nope.
I'm sorry.
We did this too.
Okay,
Very bottom.
okay.
Go to the bottom color. Would you say it's okay to mix some black oil into epoxy layer to help speed drying? Ooh, this is, I don't think it would be the way to speed up drying. And what?
I'm sorry, I missed that. I was reading some of this.
Okay, now we're too comfortable here. So
okay, so
did you find?
There's a lot of questions there. I didn't read it.
I'm reading right here. What? Oh, okay. So would you say it's okay to mix some black oil into epoxy layer to help speed
Epoxy?
Yeah. I'm reading how would be with my accent.
Again, it's possible, but this would tend to introduce more glossiness at an early stage of the painting, and so generally I would refrain from doing that. But it can be done.
Probably not. Other ways would be better to
just painting very thinly and don't add any medium to those colors would be probably a better way to do that.
So Mazen has a question about ultramarine. Some companies mix it with wax. Do you think that wax may have side effect? Thank you very much.
The wax.
The ultramarine is one of the horrible pigments to make the paint. I can tell you that. So we in our classes we always saying that if we want to discourage you to make the paint, so try to do the ultramarine, because ultramarine loves water, hates oil, and that's why.
And the reason why they would add wax is because it is poor wetting by oil, and some companies add wax. Some companies use aluminum stearate as an additive to paint in order to, and in fact they do that with all of their paints in order to make it easier in production. So it's a production addition. It makes it easier to grind. It stabilizes the paint early on. We're learning more and more about issues with some of these additives. Wax is well known to have issues in painting. I, however, think that very small amounts of wax is not going to be as problematic as some individuals now are actually using large volumes of wax. It's now kind of a trend to do paintings with what they call cold wax, which is a wax paste in a solvent, and then adding that into their paint to build up texture or impastos. Really, that's not a good practice because it'll make those. We've seen that those problems with paintings from the 18th and 19th century, especially like Joshua Reynolds, who used quite a bit of wax in his paint films. And so not a good practice. We don't really recommend
See,
that.
that's why in Italian varnish, when George was, of course, he recreated the first original formula, and that was, horrible to use it. But so that's why he reduced the wax in Italian varnish to the almost to a couple percentage only, and it is trouble. I mean, some people are saying that the wax is so bad, and so they completely abandon.
In the Italian varnish, well, in actually all of the gel mediums that we make, we have a very small amount of wax. It's probably a wax. It's not beeswax. It's castor wax, which has a much higher melting point than beeswax, so that gives it another advantage. But we use such a small amount; it's about 1%, and that we use that to enable it to gel. So there's always going to be compromises to some degree in whatever you're doing, and the whole point is to avoid major compromises that would then be problematic for your painting at some point. Amresh asks, would it be recommended to mix the Venetian medium with stand oil, dammer, or beeswax stand oil? Like I said, don't use resins if you can avoid them, and if you do, use them very sparingly. So it's better just to make these mediums less complex. The simpler, the better, always. So,
Gordon, I will read your question. So I can tell you this: after last session, when George was talking about light fastness, so it was kind of heated, topic, because he said that people are less interested in light fastness than the cleaning brushes. And here we go. You are asking questions. If you will sit right here with me on my table, so I will just slap on your hands. But now it's a joke, of course. So, but anyway, so what do you think using soy or safflower cooking oil to cleaning brushes? Good, cheaper, better. So whatever you use.
That's what we've been recommending.
Yes.
Just for cleaning brushes, use any oil from your supermarket. Use that, and you have an effective cleaner. It really does a great job. You don't have to use any solvents to clean up, which is what we've always recommended, to reduce the amount of solvents used in painting.
So Amnes 33, can you use wax and turpentine as a matte varnish after painting?
Yes, you can. Yeah, that's like a wax paste. You can make a wax paste out of that, and then apply that.
Or you can buy from us. We have already.
We basically have that as wax paste. It's beeswax with mineral spirits, so it has less odor, and you can use that and apply that to the painting. Of course, you want to do that once it's completely dry, of course. Great. Any other questions that we missed here? I'm just looking
Gordon,
back.
love you too. So that's that's good. Thank you for everybody with
good
your
comment.
love.
Jacob talked about mixing charcoal with bodied oil and took forever to dry. And that's
why.
even though charcoal is not pure carbon, which is basically like bone black, which is a very small amount of carbon. It's usually less than 20%. The rest of it is calcium hydropaxate, which is transparent. So it's really quite good. But yeah, so we're.
If we didn't answer, write
Sorry if you
something.
missed you.
Because it was still we on three computers here. So
we're looking through any questions. So
if we didn't answer something, oh yes, let's the promotion. I mean the talking. So remember, we made that great.
So we made this edition of the Italian varnish to be kind of a historical novelty.
Yeah.
And
so just want to remind you how to use. You take out that red dot or whatever cup, and so you a little bit turn, because you kind of like giving the oh, okay, more. And then you squeeze. You know how to squeeze. So and that would be great way to measure actually the smallest amount. Not like I had an.
It has 50. It's not the cheapest way to buy this product.
Oh no, it's not.
It's 15 milliliters.
No, it's
and
not.
you can buy it cheaper.
But
in the tube.
It was.
We just fell in love with
the making of this.
Historicity.
To
Here's
put
by
that
the way
here
what
inside. Yes.
This is what a paint syringe from the 19th century. William Windsor, partner to Winsor Newton, actually started using this to encapsulate their paints or to package their paints before the tube. This was at 1840, and then shortly thereafter, I think 1841, they started introducing the collapsible tube. So so that's what that is. But this is the product here.
This is the product here.
Yeah. And
it's just fun,
and
guys.
It's
definitely
nice
no
like
saving
this.
money here. So that's for sure. So it's if you're asking if it's the best way, no, but it's fun to give to your favorite artist. And so it's like, oh, here's something very unusual. But again, we love to do things like this here. And remember our colors, historical colors, gone. So we did this in jars, and it was beautiful addition. We love it. So of course it took for us 2 years to make them, because we wanted to introduce all of them together, five of them together. So it's 2 years of work for months and a half sell. That's it. So.
So one couple questions here again. Vince, why does your Venetian red oil paint and hematite have a strong odor? That's just the odor of paint. There's we absolutely don't have any other ingredients in there. We just put oil and paint now and pigment. Keep in mind, folks, that each pigment in oil reacts with the oil. They do form either soaps, they have some reaction, and that can produce some odor. That's just a natural outcome.
George, every time he comes
paint.
to factory, and he knows almost immediately what on the mills grinding today, because like ultramarine will have that horrible smell of dirty soaks, and of course Prussian blue has
another odor. All paints have odors. It's just,
of course, lead white smells nice. It's almost like sweet vinegary smell, and so I mean we don't. With iron oxides, I really, for me, it's interesting. Then you notice. I will go back today and smell. We'll see what you smelling. It's like like orpiment. It was unbelievable. It's like rotten eggs, and so for me. And I even on the video I said then, oh God, that smells so bad. Whole my room smells bad. And but then we had Artist Day where it's like, what are you talking about? That's normal paint to smell. And so it's kind
It's
of like
because our orpiment is a sulfur pigment,
Yeah.
so it's going to have that odor
Yeah.
like that. So of course the question, will the special syringe be available on the website? It is now on the website.
it's since last week.
Actually,
Yes,
if you
it's
go
there.
to mediums, oil painting mediums, you'll see it. It'll be the
Yep.
first thing there.
Yeah.
And Michelle asked, and this will probably close with some of these questions, is it difficult to turn oil into a gel? Could it be done at home, or is it a complicated process? It is a complicated process, and
We're excited
isn't
when
very
people
easy.
are trying to do something.
Obviously,
and it's-
you can gel it by adding mastic varnish to a leaded oil, like a black oil, but that will gel. But to avoid the resin, it becomes much more difficult to do that. So yeah, not something I know some people try it at home, but it's not very easy. Okay, that wraps up all the questions we have, and.
And we are wrapping now a year. It was very difficult year for us as a company, and probably much more difficult than even COVID hit us. But I am certainly happy it's finishing, and I as a Russian, we are always talking about old New Year, and so we are talking about New Year will be the best, and so I hope that would be best year for you. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays,
Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa, and Happy New Year, s Novim Godom, and we wish you and your families and your loved ones really the health, the peace, and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye now.